During an international pandemic, it has become more apparent than ever that vaccines are important in order to protect society from the contraction and spread of diseases. However, there still appears to be large anti-vax communities that we are fighting, and during the creation of a COVID vaccine, we all hold our breaths, hoping that we won't have to keep holding our breaths forever because the anti-vax community refuses to protect not only themselves, but everyone around them. I thought now would be an amazing time to interview a registered nurse about the anti-vax community and why, especially during this pandemic, vaccines are more important than ever. So today, I am discussing these topics with Mary, RN H20, so stay tuned for that. Hello everyone, my name is Beth, or Queen of Spade. Please do give this video a like, subscribe if you're new. Now, without further ado, let's throw some spade, and let's discuss vaccines with Mary RN. I have Mary here on our channel today, and she is going to be speaking about vaccinations. So, Mary, do you want to maybe just let us know who you are, your education, what you do for work?
Sure, okay. My name is Mary, and I am a registered nurse. I graduated recently from the Bachelor's in Science and Nursing program, and I do med-surg trauma.
Wow, that's a hard job.
Yeah, it can be, but it's actually very rewarding, and you get to learn a lot about everything. There's nothing off limits. You learn every body system, everything can be dreamed, to a degree. That's why it's not like a good long-term position to have, but it's definitely something good to immerse yourself in, like when you first graduate.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to have you on today to talk a little bit about vaccinations, because as I'm sure you're aware, my channel likes to throw spade at the anti-MLM community and the anti-vax community. They're kind of connected.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So, as a nurse, if I was to ask you why someone needed to get vaccinated, I go in, I get a shot, and then how does that protect me?
It is through active immunity, and I can break that down. Active immunity is a type of immunity versus passive. It's the type of immunity which results from the production of antibodies by the immune system in response to a presence of an antigen. And then it can break down to how you get that. So there's different types of immunity, as you know. Like passive immunity would be like if you were to be breastfed or in utero and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So active immunity is also natural or acquired. And what that means is you're exposed to an antigen, your body produces antibodies, or the IgG antibodies, and specific to be able to recognize that the antibodies will come across it and be able to fight it again, because it remembers that specific antigen that it's encountering. So then when we're dealing with vaccines, it's the same concept. You would either get it actively through active means like touching somebody that has chicken pox, or being exposed to that particular disease, or they would artificially do it as well. And they used both ways. They can do attenuated viruses for virus vaccines, and they also have artificial ways that are just pieces of the antigen, and they are also combined with the aluminum to help you absorb it better, because the live ones will actually cause you to get sick. temporarily.
Is that the flu vaccine? Is that a live one?
It can be. They kind of shied away from that.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people were saying that they stopped getting the flu vaccine because it made them sick. So that's why I was wondering that.
And that's why they shied away from the live attenuated vaccines. So then they used either the toxoids or the subunits of that particular virus, and then that's why they need to combine it with the adjuvants to be able to absorb them, because otherwise your body simply won't even try to attack it with the antibodies.
So is it fair to say then that, like in the case with the flu vaccine, if there does appear to be a problem, like many people complaining about getting sick from getting the vaccine, that they'll actually take that vaccine back into the lab and make it better so that people don't get sick from it?
Exactly. That's why they stopped doing the nasal ones here, at least in the United States, as much. And because they were the live ones, like that was the drawback of using the nasal live vaccine versus the regular vaccine. And it was more comfortable for people initially, but then they would get really, really sick at first.
Okay.
And cool. I don't know if the sickness is, if they do get sick, there are some side effects that mimic sickness with some of the vaccines. Like it's very possible you can get a fever. You can get redness at the site afterwards.
Well, it's just like when you take your toddler in to get vaccines and they tell you that you should bring Tylenol with you because your toddler might get a fever, might get a headache or feel really tired afterwards. It's kind of the same thing in adults, right? Well,
your body's basically fighting a foreign substance that's in your body to develop immunity to it, so that if it counters it again, it's ready to fight it right off.
It's basically creating an army within your body that remembers what that virus is so that it can attack it again when it shows up.
There's these memory cells in your immune system that kind of are like little record keepers that sit there and go, oh, I remember this, and then those memory cells will send out the all alert next time that you come across this particular virus, and it will get it. And if you even, sometimes they don't get the virus 100% correct in every flu year, it will still fight it off at least 60 or 70% of what it would have been if you would have caught the entire flu.
Yeah, you won't get as sick. It'll be a way better experience than if you hadn't gotten the vaccine.
It'll definitely not be deadly like it would originally have been.
Which is one of the reasons why for babies and elderly people and everything, why they need to be vaccinated and why we also have to have herd immunity.
Exactly. They don't have those, so those memory cells in the older people have kind of gotten weaker over time, and they're less able to respond, plus they have comorbidities that make it difficult for them to fight things off. And then babies are born with a fresh slate, so they rely on what they got in utero, which still doesn't last all the way past they have a 2-month, a 4-month, a 6-month schedule, because what they receive in breastfeeding and in utero isn't enough to protect them in the environment from catching these diseases.
Yeah, well, it's also a different environment. Now they're in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Could you maybe explain to us why vaccines are important?
Vaccines are very important. They help to prevent basically a pandemic or an epidemic of preventable diseases in the United States or wherever you live. It's very important because it uses the ability to keep diseases at bay that we haven't had around until recently, when the anti-vax people decided to emerge.
Would you say there's a link between the anti-vax community and things such as the measles coming back?
Absolutely. These specific diseases have not literally been emerged since they found a vaccine for them. So it's confusing as to why we would want to re-examine vaccines when they've been effective for so long. And what's shocking is we've got people out there that have been voicing their concerns in the anti-vaccine community, like celebrities such as Jenny McCarthy, who has had the opportunity to be a voice for the anti-vax community by stating the direct link between autism and vaccination. And it's primarily the adjuncts of the aluminum that they have studied recently to determine if that has any cause and effect on autism. And they've done long-term studies, they've done cross-sectional studies, all to which have pointed that none of these adjuvants have been proven to cause autism. So Jenny McCarthy was doing this campaign against vaccines and autism, and suddenly one day the CDC showed up, and this is a story my community health teacher had told me, and there's also evidence of it in articles online if you're interested in looking into them.
Yeah, I can link them underneath.
Yeah, she personally knew somebody. She does community health, so community health deals a lot with vaccines. They work directly with the CDC and the World Health Organization in these studies. And she told me this story that the CDC eventually showed up to her house and had a discussion with her, and they're like, okay, so vaccines can prevent so many deaths from occurring from diseases that don't need to reemerge and don't need to come back, like polio and measles. And you're saying that because your child had autism, that it's okay to go out there and spread the message that is counterproductive to preventing preventable diseases versus a disease that can't be proven to be prevented, if that makes sense. And so she went on to redact her statement later, but the damage had already been done.
And she redacted her statement, however, she still kind of advocates that vaccines can be harmful. And she will still talk about how they can cause issues for children, and she claims that she speaks now for the immunocompromised.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where she went with it, because she got in trouble.
Yeah, she got in trouble. They had a talk with her, but the sad part is that there are lots of people that are unfortunately unable to fight off these diseases, and if you don't vaccinate, then they're going to be susceptible to this kind of herd immunity that they're trying to claim will protect them. But what about everybody else? What about the people that can't fight off the diseases? Are you saying that it's okay for the disease to reemerge then and kill thousands and thousands of people?
Yeah, and for a lot of the cases, they'll state that the disease isn't actually that harmful. I'm sure you've heard them talking about having measles parties when they were growing up, so everyone would get the measles, so they'll say, my parents used to do that, so measles can't be too harmful, and they don't consider what you just said, that there's an entire group of people that cannot get the measles or they will die. Elders, babies, immunocompromised people. So yeah, we're forgetting about a lot of people when we say that it's okay for those diseases to reemerge again, because we want to believe Jenny McCarthy.
Yeah, and Oprah was also another person that unfortunately pushed this narrative as well. And it's just unfortunate, that they didn't look into evidence-based practice and actual science versus their opinion,
Yes, because you can't find any actual science that states that there's a link, because as you stated, every single study that they have done has said that there is no link. No link between vaccines and autism whatsoever.
Yeah. And there are vaccines with or without this adjuvant. Not all the vaccines needed them. In fact, live attenuated vaccines were effective because they caused a mild infection in people with the immune response similar to how you would if you were to actually contract it but not get nearly as sick. However, people were complaining about the signs and symptoms that went with that, which is why they decided to go with the aluminum purified adjuvant stuff that they use now, which is very low. In fact, people encounter aluminum every day in their environment. It's just so small in comparison to what they use in vaccines. It's just kind of silly to make that assumption.
Yeah, I actually read a study that said that there's more of it in baby formula than in a lot of the vaccines.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We're not advocating against baby formula. So it was just kind of funny how they said, it's actually something that you intake more often than you believe. It's even in baby formula. And then you're complaining about the vaccines.
Yeah, and these aluminum salts are mixed with the antigen to help with the absorption, which would happen anyways, that would be present in soil, water, air. It's also in medications, your cosmetics, your food,
So it's taking something that causes no harm, something that we actually intake very commonly, and basically trying to fearmonger with it.
Absolutely, with no evidence whatsoever that it's caused autism. In fact, they've been using vaccines since the 1920s, and that would mean that every generation before us and everybody around us would now have autism if that were the case.
Yeah, we would have 4 generations of autism here. And
yes,
fortunately not the case. Now,
exactly.
If you were to speak to somebody in the anti-vax community right now, and they were telling you, I don't want to get vaccinated, what would you say to them to change their mind? Because I know right now, one of the big things that's going on is that there's a COVID vaccine being created. So a lot of the worry for those of us who are, I guess, anti-vax community is that when the COVID vaccine comes out, of course, this community will not be vaccinated. It's become a big problem, the anti-vax community in schools, where we've actually had students suspended here this past year because many did not have their vaccinations up to date. So they basically started suspending students from school until they got their vaccines up to date, and it was amazing how many people got suspended. It was just incredible how many people weren't up to date on their vaccines. So
absolutely, yes.
So it's a huge problem. Like, what could you as a nurse, I know you've said a lot here, but what would you tell somebody to say to those people to change their minds?
All we can do as nurses is present them with evidence and present them with the guidelines, and also present them with just the facts, and unfortunately a lot of people aren't up to date on their schedules. In fact, when I did some community health rotation there was people coming in at age 5 and 6 that hadn't had any. We had to give those poor children, I think, almost 10 shots that day. Basically, I would ask them what their concerns were and address them by each concern. If it's to see if it was because of fears of autism, I would address, I would show them the evidence-based practice articles I have proving that there's been studies done that do not support that claim, or if it's simply just fear of what vaccines are, help them better understand what they do and how they work. I would have questions for them, and based off of their answers, I would have to do education from there. I would have to explain the adjuvants, if that's the issue with the autism fear. I would just have to address topic by topic with them until I could determine how to best educate them, because they're coming in there with already an idea that the vaccines could potentially harm them. So I would just very calmly ask them therapeutically, what is your concern, so that I can help you with that concern. Unfortunately, they do have the right to refuse at the end of the day, but then if they refuse, they're not able to go to schools, or at least public schools, right? So then do they have the resources to home educate? Because that's probably more than likely what will happen if they're not able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would, so economically it would force them to have to homeschool.
And that's actually really interesting that you bring that up, because I think a lot of people maybe don't think of that aspect, to bring that up at the end, to say, well, did you take into consideration that if you don't get your children vaccinated, they won't be able to go to school, you'll have to homeschool them, it will cost you more money, things like that.
Yeah, and your time, you're not going to be able to, if you're a professional, doing something out there, there's no way you're going to be able to stay home, homeschool, and be a parent, and work, It's so, I would also just tell them that as well, not to tell them like one way or another, but just to make it a point that this is going to more than likely be what happens,
Are you into the mandated vaccines? Do you believe that as a society we should have those mandated vaccines? Kids should not attend school without them? Like, you're fine with that happening, right?
Absolutely. I'm absolutely fine with that. I don't see how that's problematic unless there is a condition where they absolutely cannot take it, but they've modified and refined the vaccine so well up into 2020 that that's few and far between. I mean, they don't even hardly use egg for flu vaccines anymore, so people can typically fall back on allergies or religious excuse, or just straight up deny the vaccine. That is their patient right. But unfortunately, in the education system, it's dangerous to have your kid be more important than the rest of the kids around them, if that makes sense, because you don't want to do what is recommended. I think vaccines have proven to be effective since 1926. It's scary that, there's a new pandemic that we're encountering with COVID-19, and it's just going to take a year or two to refine an exact vaccine, but they're working on it. I don't think anybody puts vaccines out there without rigorous testing. They did before, about maybe 40 or 50 years ago, but even then there was still pretty focused research in it, because they wanted to eliminate it. Yeah.
For that time, it was extensive research, right? Because we weren't able to do as much, of course, as we are now.
Exactly.
So it's fair to say that they've always been extensively looked into before just released out into the public. They've been researched, tested, and always like the best medical that they could give it at the time, right?
Exactly. And like, I as a healthcare professional have mandated vaccines that I have to do every year. I have to take the influenza vaccine. I have to do hepatitis B. I have to have rigorous employee records showing that I've had my DTaP and I've had everything, MMR, everything since I was hired, because if I'm not, employee health will make sure that I'm up to date on it. And I'm glad, they do TB testing, they do COVID-19 testing, and it's for our own protection. It's not to make us feel like we're getting something we don't want to do. Like,
yeah, it's to protect you because you work, in an emergency setting.
Yeah, and there are people that don't get it, but they have to wear a face mask the rest of the year.
Yep. And that would be for like religious reasons or because of being immunocompromised. I'm sure that would be the only way that you could get out of those mandated
Absolutely.
vaccines.
That, and then they're protecting themselves and others because they're not immune now, so they can pick it up in the hospital and others can pick it up from them, so thus they must wear face masks for patient care.
It's all to help protect you from the disease and also manage the spread of the disease.
Correct, yes.
And I'm all for the school system, especially saying that kids have to be up to date if they want to attend school, because again, you know, especially with COVID, I know a lot of us are thinking about what's going to happen when our kids go back to school and how that's going to look. And in a weird way, I'm hoping that this might wake some people up, because they will realize how hard it really would be if you were having to homeschool your kid because they didn't get vaccinated, or how serious an outbreak like this can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the alternative is everybody lives in isolation for the rest of their life, and I don't think that's a very rational thing for anybody to want.
No, because when you think about it, like, right now we have COVID out, it's brand new, so it spread like wildfire, nobody was immune to it, so we all had to go into isolation. So if we continue down this path as a society, where we continue to have this anti-vax community spreading, and lots of people aren't getting vaccinated, and more viruses come out, this will be our norm.
Yeah.
We will all have to essentially live like this forever.
And that would not be beneficial to society at all.
So it's kind of like right now more than ever is the time to kind of snip this community in the ass, if you will. And I do know that the CDC has gotten very angry since COVID with the holistic medicine community and the anti-vax community and even the MLMs, and said, listen, if you're saying that your stuff works and it will take away COVID, or you're saying that we don't need vaccines to help us with COVID, then you better provide that scientific proof right now, or they literally told them to shut the fuck up. They swore in the post. It was hilarious. So even the CDC has kind of come out and been like, listen, we're done with this. We now have this COVID epidemic, and we're just not dealing with you people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, right now there's more important things to focus on so we can move on and go back to a life that we used to live by being able to learn and grow from this unfortunate pandemic. And if this is the only thing that will wake people up, and if it doesn't, I don't know what will, you know?
Yeah, well, exactly. This is kind of the wake-up call that community and everyone kind of needs to realize that how serious this is.
And it's not about telling people what to do. It's more of do you care about others around you? Do you want the society to be able to function as a whole and be free of preventable diseases? It's not a question of we're making you or you have to. It's think about society as a whole and be more altruistic in your thinking.
Yes, because I know that a lot of the anti-vax community, some of their issue is that they feel like the government is forcing them. You know, they're forcing them to get the vaccine. The government wants to try to control them. I'm sure you've heard all of the conspiracy theories out there.
Yeah, of course. And like sometimes, you know, we don't like what the government says and this, that, and the other, but these are guidelines. These aren't absolutes, but you need to be thinking of everybody and not just your fears and yourself in situations like this, because we're a part of a global society of people that are supposed to want the best for people, you know, and it's just not very helpful to be self-serving in times like this.
Well, thank you, Mary, very much for coming on. I appreciate it. That was very interesting.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Having someone with a bachelor's that can explain it. I unfortunately do not have the education you have, so I could throw spade at the community all day. However, I wanted to have somebody on here with the actual educational background to be able to discuss this. So I really appreciate you doing that.
Absolutely. And everybody can educate themselves. That's the best thing about being a patient and being a person is you're your own best advocate, yes, but use the resources that you need to make a better deduction on what you're going to do for your own health versus what people are telling you.
Yeah, and check your resources. Make sure your resources come from scientific evidence and not Oprah and Jenny McCarthy.
Exactly, yeah, of course.
Okay, well, thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on, Mary. That was fun and also informative. I will leave Mary's channel information in the description down below. Go give her a sub, check her out, like all her videos, and be sure to give this video a like and subscribe here if you're new. I am super pumped to have reached over 500 on the road to 1,000 now, baby. And I'm going to take off. So no matter where you are or what you are doing, I hope that you all have a fabulous day. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Make sure you get them vaccines. See you later. Bye.